Thanks for coming. This is the advisory design panel for Thursday, December 14th, 2 o'clock. Council chambers. First order of the agenda is welcome everyone to the Squamish Nation traditional territory. We're very thankful to share the land. Second is to motion to adopt the agenda. Shan and Dean. Thank you. John, sorry. Next item is to adopt the minutes. Motion to, has anyone read it? And is there any changes to that? Discussion on the minutes from last meeting? Okay, motion to adopt the minutes from last meeting. Dwayne? Seconded John? Thank you. And right into the business. First order is the mayor is here today.
Yeah, hi everybody. We've been going around to all of our committees to just say thank you for the incredible work and the dedication that you provide, the expertise you provide, and the wisdom you provide to the district. We've hopefully got a token of our appreciation in front of you all. Do we have more of them if we need more? Just a little something, the much coveted Squamish mug, of course, as well as some treats, but just a small token to essentially just express our thanks for the work that you do here. We really value the contribution that ADP does to our community vernacular, to our built environment, to making sure we're raising the bar, and so I want to thank you very much. I also have a little bit of a special thing for the chair, Richard. You have a great responsibility because our planning department's introduced a new DPA 1 called the ELF District, Development Permit Area Guidelines. Just to give you an understanding, the city designates DPAs to provide council and staff with the ability to shape the development beyond what is possible through policy and zoning regulations. This ELF district that you are now tasked with developing, he's like, I'm going to kill you. Really, you need to express the city's expectations through this project and ideally bring it back for the ADP to partake in meeting at some point in the future. Staff, I think, wanted me to read this whole thing out, but I can't possibly do that. But here are your instructions.
Oh, yeah.
And here is your gift, although you may not see it as a gift, but a task, just to say thanks for your contribution as chair, and this is the gift that keeps on giving, because hopefully you bring it back with new DP guidelines for any future ELF projects that may come forward to the district. Right. Anyway, a little bit of fun, but just thank you so much, everybody. I look forward to the next year, and I know staff really appreciate all the contribution that you all make, so, and the council as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Look forward to building this.
maybe you should. You have to get it approved first.
Yeah. and we brought in some nibbles and some treats and stuff, so make sure you eat it. Thank you. You can have some too.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you. All right, festive. Let's go. Under one roof is our next project here. This is exciting. On 37871 3rd Avenue. Here to present first for the district is your name.
Hi, I'm Elaine Naisby. I'm a planner in community planning, and I will provide some context for this project. And then we have Justin Dick and Heather Honeycutt from CHPA Architects who will present the project. So this is a unique project. It's a partnership between the District of Squamish, who's providing the land, Squamish Helping Hands Society, and we've got Maureen McKell here, and also BC Housing. And so BC Housing is funding this project, and then Squamish Helping Hands will manage the building. And it's located at the southwest corner of Main Street and 3rd Avenue, so not very far from here. It is filling a critical need in the community, so it's the relocation of the emergency shelter, which is currently kitty corner to this location, as well as the relocation of the Squamish Food Bank. onto this site. There's related associated social services that I think that these guys will speak a bit more to. And then above that is social housing, and so it's a range from core needs housing to transitional housing, and at the top is some affordable independent living. And so the site is being maximized to support and accommodate the proposed uses and the co-location of these social services, and so there is no on-street parking on this project. However, I did mention the existing emergency shelter is kitty corner to this site, and so in the short term it's proposed that parking need will be met on that site. Also, anybody familiar with this site, there is a portion of the stormwater detention pond that's right at the corner and under part of the building footprint, and so the plan is for that to be filled in, and that's being addressed through engineering. And so this is an institutional project, and so it's not subject to a DP. However, staff would like ADP comments. And so yeah, due to the nature of this project, we are looking for comments that will result in improving the project, but hopefully not significant cost increase. And so finally, staff is seeking comments and not a formal recommendation today. And with that, I will pass it over.
So as she described, we are maximizing the site. The proposed building is shown here on red, and this outline is the extent of our property. So it is facing 3rd Ave into the back where the slough is. The different shelter units are facing both front and back, so they have a view of the street and they have a view of the open water behind it. And then Main Street is to the north. And on the site too, at the front, there's about 36 bicycle parking stalls. And to the back, there's a outdoor patio for barbecuing, stuff for the residents, as well as a loading area for the food services. So to the rear of the site is the existing slough, and we're working with Civil to have them fill that in so we can develop on the first 3 portions of that lot. So the programming of the building, there's a food bank to the street corner, so they have pedestrian access, and the seating area can be used by the public as well. There's a laundry facility which would include donation center. There's indoor bicycle storage for the tenants as well and for staff. And there's a multi-purpose meeting space. So all that is fronting the street. And to the rear of the building, facing the slough, there's a dining hall for the residents and for the public looking for food services.
We should call it like an English rowing channel instead of slough, maybe. There it is, a slough.
And on this floor as well is 8 beds for emergency shelter. And the upper stories is the transitional housing. So as people move up in the building, they're moving up in life. So there'll be different finishes and such going upwards. Layout. So it's mostly 1 beds, but there is also double occupancy suites with 2 beds, as well as handicap units. So the elevations, the form and character of the building, we're using durable materials such as fiber cement and wood-look panels, architectural concrete, so it will withstand time. And with the wood look, it kind of speaks to the area as well. And for signage, we've included the main entrance with some corrugated metal signifying the under 1 roof, and the food bank grocery And there will also be signage showing the different donors and partners involved in this project as well.
The ground floor is all concrete as well, just because of the commercial and mercantile nature of it. So it's a concrete first floor and 3 stories of wood frame above.
That's it.
Oh, into the video. Yeah, some of the other things we tried, that concrete plinth, we need a 2-hour separation to the floors above, so we did play with vaulting it on the back and such, but both economy and fire rating wise, it does need to remain flat as we're showing there. There's cast in place concrete on the front here, so it'd be architectural cast in place, the light gray, and then other parts of that concrete we are facing with faux wood cement board.
In the rear of the building, there's also outdoor patios for the residents and a patio to the side for the staff.
Yes, that's a view to the back there. We have an unfortunate location for a transformer, but we're pretty pressed on where it can go. And then to the left there that we just went by is the outdoor patio facing the south and onto the beautiful water feature behind us. So we're probably we've been moving 100 miles an hour at this, progressing working drawings along. As you can see, this is a working drawing set. We are at a good point and really happy to hear kind of comments and feedback. We are at a point where we're starting to fine tune the exterior of this building. So just open it up to comments and any suggestions, and here to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks for the presentation. I usually start with questions. We'll do a quick round of questions. Sarah, do you want to start?
Sure. Is there a material report?
The materials haven't been finalized yet. We're waiting for budget.
Okay.
Yeah. But this will more or less be the aesthetic we're going for. Right now it's a matter of will it be phenolic panels or some kind of hardboard material for the wood look, or if it'll be stained hardy board.
We got the budget yesterday. It's probably going to be stained wood hardy board, but we did look at composite panels and other things for the wood feature that we have on the vertical elements.
And then I guess are the soffits wood, or would they be a similar?
They'll probably be the hardy stained board.
Stained.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That's all my questions.
One question, one of the renderings shows kind of a metal sunshade, is that, but it didn't show up in anything else, is that?
That's an older set then. We've removed the sunshades. They weren't providing as much as we hoped they were for the cost they are.
Well, originally because it's BC Housing Provincial, we were targeting step code 3, and the sunshades are a requirement of that, so we designed it to that effect. They also don't really fall within our budget, so they may drop the step code to accommodate, just to not have to provide them.
Okay. Dwayne?
Just a question on sustainability then, your step code 3. What is the size of your windows? What's the vertical height of your windows?
5 feet. We're working with an energy model, and they're inputting the window sizes, and we're in the process, and as we get more information from them and such, we've been resizing them throughout the process. And
I think that's what they'll be though. They're probably around 5 feet and probably 36 inch off the floor.
Yeah, yeah. And it's exterior insulation, continuous, R40 roof and such.
Do you have a landscape consultant?
Yeah.
We do, yeah. Although there's we're going to bring Kyung, our landscape architect, along, but since the entire site is a building, it's quite limited, the amount of landscape. On the north side there, we have been working with Cascadia for the environmental riparian area. This is everything north of this kind of assumed property line here is riparian replanting. They are allowing us to do some planter boxes within that, calling it agricultural within the replanting plan. So there's a little bit of a crushed rock path and some planter boxes back there. And the remainder is just the front corner is really all that we have left to work with for plant-wise to populate that front corner.
Just a question for planning then, do you require a presentation by a landscape architect for the advisory design plan?
We normally do, this is a special project in that it doesn't require a development permit, so it's going to go straight to building permit. So we've tried to move this project as quickly as the project can move. So that's the reason why there isn't one today.
But if there is comments and questions, like the landscape architect is within, it's a division of our CHPs within our office, and we can certainly bring recommendations to him.
And last question, is there a sign permit required for the signage that is being proposed? Would you be taking a sign?
Yeah, we do sign permits, usually at the point when the project is, you know, the operation is ready for signage.
Thank you.
Okay. Cheryl?
No questions.
What was in site plan, what was the restriction on your property? It looks like you've chewed into some of those sliver lots there. Was there size-wise and height-wise? What was the limiting factor there?
On how much property we
Yeah, it looks like you're
use?
just filling in, so why not?
For the zoning?
No, because the city owns all those properties, right?
Right, yeah.
It was the riparian trade-off, the amount of land that was needed to swap the slough that was being filled in, that kind of dictated how much had to be,
Oh.
I guess not dedicated, it's the
Yeah.
city's property. And that's what established our property line there. And we did, because we're so limited on outdoor space, we did ask our environmental consultant, how much can we sneak towards
Yeah.
the slough and make use of that?
Mhm.
And basically, the more we go in that direction, the stiffer we are on other land that needs to be traded off. So that line was provided to us as kind of our faux property line to work on.
Okay, yeah.
If I may add to that, the portion that's being filled in, most of it is a stormwater pond. It's like a two-step stormwater management system.
Yeah.
So if you go by there, it's actually the black water pond
Yeah.
that's being filled in, and there's going to be some infrastructure that goes into it to kind of maintain the stormwater management function and improve it.
Okay. That's all my questions.
Curious about staff parking, is that expected to be on the street? In front of the building is
For the most part, staff is expected to bicycle.
It's on the street, and it's kitty corner on the existing Helping Hands property where there's existing parking stalls.
Mhm.
Once they move over here, that's where staff and visitors and such will go.
Is there a staff count, approximate number? Just curious.
There's total staff in the building?
At one time
Yeah.
for 5 to 10 people.
So just for the audience, it's 5 to 10 people, because the cameras can't pick up Maureen. Maybe Maureen,
Oh,
you should
sorry.
pull up a chair.
I'd be happy to.
All right.
Yes, so the short-term solution is on the site that we currently are, and then as we plan with the district, there will be parking allotted to us as a community, deal with our parking issues.
In the nearby district-owned lands?
Yes.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Just looking at the floor plan and the layout, was there, it appears to me that the largest size of the units above are just double size, is that correct? Was there any consideration of having like even several of the larger ones available for like a family situation?
Can I?
Yeah.
No, generally this is the lowest part of the continuum of housing. So the second floor is low barrier, third floor transitional, so that's all program laden. And so it is not really appropriate for families. There is a possibility on the fourth floor has a little more flexibility, but in general this would be an adult facility as far as housing goes. As far as serving families in the lower, on the ground level, yes, we will now be able to feed hot meals to families, be able to service daily grocery food banks. So it's a huge improvement over what we have now.
And is that something like with the Center Point building that those like it's like there's reasonable access to like the facilities like the food bank and things that families would be using, that it's a close enough proximity where the services are provided? That the services that are provided in this building will be very readily accessible to other people.
Anybody
in the
who,
family
anybody
situation.
who needs the service will be serviced in this building. And yes, the reason it's the downtown core is that's the, that makes the most sense for people to access, young families who may not have transportation. So depending on buses and all of that. So that is a key, location has been key. Yeah.
Thank you.
The property to the southwest or south is municipal?
It's a road right away, yeah.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
The large parcel to the south?
Oh, no, there's a sliver of road right away, a lane, and then it's a private property, industrial property.
Okay. And the riparian area to the west, I guess, because there's a bit of a wedge of land there, you're filling in on the corner, but there's quite a bit of land to the west. Is that all no touch zone, or
Yeah.
just based on the calculation and no trade-offs about that? Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I think it's a trade-off, both land and both quality of plantings and such. So we've pushed to head in that direction, and the line was kind of set for us.
Yep.
So.
Okay. And there are no street trees on Third. Why is that?
We're still resolving Third Avenue a little bit, so the plan in the active transportation plan is to have a separated bike lane that goes the full length of Third Avenue, and so the building is set back, I believe it's 1.5 or 1.8 meters from the property line, and because we haven't yet installed this separated bike lane, we're still figuring out how it's going to work with existing buildings and new buildings and all the rest of it, and so
it'd
we're
be
still
possible
figuring it out.
when the street design is figured out that the city would come back and include street trees if that was part of the overall design?
No, I think we're going to try to figure that out as part of this process.
Okay, that's it for me.
What's happening with the existing Helping Hands property? Does that stay
That's
owned?
the district owned.
And is that staying that use
Yeah,
short term?
it's staying, the ownership is going to stay the same. The use in terms of immediate future will be for, we're going to be accommodating parking on that site for the new development, and we're not sure what's happening with that afterwards.
And can you just clarify for me which elevation is the Main Street elevation? The kind of directions are a bit confusing for me. Is it the
No.
east?
Sorry. Main Street is this side.
The bottom right here.
No, that's Third.
Oh, I'm sorry. Main Street.
The north and south.
It's going to be that
It's
one.
two labeled.
So the long one's Third Ave.
Yeah. I want the short,
With
which
the
is the
signage,
short one?
it's the one, just
This
that
one.
one, yeah.
Okay.
So that's Main Street there. Because we don't have circulation, that is our loading, our garbage, which we've added some windows to articulate a little bit, and
And that'll be landscaped. So it won't be an exposed concrete wall.
Okay, like was kind of shown in the 3D.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
a better, yeah.
Okay. That's it for me.
Okay. Just carry into comments. Sarah, do you have any comments?
Hey, I'm pleased to see that there's accessible units on each floor. Thank you very much. Sorry. Okay, I just didn't hear what you said. Oh, I just said thank you to them for showing accessible units on each floor. My comments really are just around the kitchen on the 4th floor that would be more apartments of what things you should have here. So you should have a cooktop that can yield under, the sink should be able to yield under, wall oven
Oh, for
your,
the accessible
for
one?
the accessible unit.
For sure, yeah.
Fridge to put the freezer on the bottom, make sure the controls are pretty high, with 1200 millimeters above the floor, and yeah, otherwise it looks great. Oh, also the countertop that's serving the cafe, if it can be at kind of like at a table height rather than at counter height, so that it's easier for to get along with it. Yeah, so the window, the serving window. Beautiful. That's it, thanks.
Thanks.
Just one comment, and that's just, I think you've done a really good job in making the building look nice given the budget constraints and all of the programming you have put on the ground floor. So I'm glad to see this project moving forward, and I don't really have any comments on the design again.
There's a lot of stuff going on in this building.
Yeah. Oh, well, I do, one comment that's pretty subjective, and that is, just in terms of the color, it's, yeah, I mean, I guess it fits with the neighborhood, but a lot of the buildings are around have a little bit more color, which I think has been nice to see. Just kind of goes in the opposite direction with a little bit more muted tones, which personally I like, but I think just in terms of kind of neighborhood character and the use of this building, it might do well with a little bit more color, stronger color.
Good to think.
Like not add an additional color, but maybe the
Change
color that we have,
Yes,
maybe
right.
a little more
brightness.
brightness or
Yeah.
okay.
Thanks. Dwayne?
Yeah, great. I just want to thank the applicant. I think that as far as the project and its building, obviously has a very strong need, and I appreciate the uniformity of the project. I like how it actually it's got a module form portion. I think the treatment of the roofs is, it is what it is, but it's obviously you've thought about scale. The ground plane again, I appreciate how you've opened it up to the street. You've actually you haven't turned your back to anybody on this project. You've actually appears to be quite welcoming. Your food services are on the street. You see activity, it's going to give it some life. It's certainly got a street presence to some degree. I think it's working. I think my comments are really related to the building form and probably a little bit about character. And I think just to be blunt on the form, I think what's missing on it is probably a fenestration or a second portion of the windows. And I think it can be taken care of if you think about a north window wants to be more of a tall and thin and taking in the light. Given the clientele, they're impoverished obviously, and they're looking for an environment that's inspiring. And so the window sizes are probably going to be very important. And I realize there's a balance with building envelope and sustainability. But there is a real opportunity here. You've got a sort of a very strong horizontal expression in the building, and you're creating a vertical expression, and I'm wondering if the windows can take on more of a vertical expression to amplify, obviously, a larger window. So just to be specific, a taller window will give you more light, right, than a horizontal window.
Taller and a little narrower
perhaps.
kind of proportion to
and as far, I think the other consideration perhaps is just the idea of overlook. You've got some very strong roofs that are on the lower floor. I think it needs, given the longevity, that roof is going to be seen, it's going to collect dirt, and it needs to probably have a colored ballast or a colored roof scape treatment. It can easily be done.
or a nice green roof.
No, I think you can do it. There are ways of doing it that allow you to have, with no cost, to be honest, you can actually create a bit of color through cap sheets.
That's the top of these lower
Correct.
guys, right? So the view from the units down.
Yep. I think that would have solved the overlook issue, perhaps. But the other thing, I think, if you have the renderings on file there, you could. Just back to the ground plane comment, I as I said, I really like the glass and the openness. It just needs another layer of community and invitedness, and I think that can be achieved perhaps a little bit about how it meets the ground and how it meets the ground plane. I mean, right now it's sort of stuck into the ground, and it could use another landscape layer, benches. It could use sort of a base to your columns. Right now the columns are just applied, right? I think if you,
And just to clarify, those columns are the actual, that's architectural cast in place, and then we're fitting the windows between them, but I hear what you're.
yeah, I mean, at
Some
that level,
treatment, another level of detail.
wants to be at a smaller scale rather than a monolithic scale. And again, I agree with Pam's comment on the color. I'd probably just, if you can justify maybe defining your color palette, and maybe it wants to be a more colorful. But all of those things I'm sure you could handle, and it's probably well received. And a bit of a, not directed to the applicant, and I guess I just to be sort of blunt around some of the application of the panel. When we're getting materials, we want a complete application. Let's be blunt. I'm going to say this is that, you know, we should have, you know, we as a panel really need to have complete information to review it. And if we're not getting, you know, a landscape architect, and yet they're required, and I think, you know, I appreciate it's being expedited through the process. But, you know, there's no color board, right? There's other these things that panels have on their checklist that we as a panel should be reviewing, and we're not getting it. So again, I don't put any reflect back on the applicant, but I think as a panel, we really should have complete information.
Yeah, well, I agree with you. This is a pretty quick, it's been a couple days to get this together for you to get on tonight. And our drawings are working drawings. You can see they have grid lines and all those things. So yeah, obviously typically we would have those things, but this is just a unique situation as well. So.
Fair enough. And I think it's more of a checklist thing that planning can handle. Otherwise, that's great project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sure.
I guess I would echo Dwayne's comments regarding the north side and the south side exposures. So if you can consider that, and further to that, I know it's kind of, I don't know if it actually fits with your clientele, but it looks like there is quite a bit of roof area at level 2. Perhaps you could consider using some of that exterior space as outdoor communal spaces. So, because there doesn't appear to be a lot of outdoor spaces, but I don't know if that's because of your program doesn't allow it.
Base constraint.
And the staff lounge is north facing, right? So that's kind of in shade for. There's no
Yeah, so I mean we've got a couple of patios here. I don't think we're utilizing that as patios. I guess part of it is the onlooking of the suites behind, but yeah, it's something we can look closely at.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for a limited budget, I'm sure you're working with, I think it's good. I like how much glazing you guys have on the main floor. As Wayne said, it opens it up to, to invite the public in. Really, I don't know what other changes you could make to it that are, that would make a big difference with a budget that you would have to be working within. I do agree with Cheryl. Maybe some of these lower roofs could become outdoor space, and then you don't have to utilize a north-facing patio. But overall, I think it's fine.
Comments might just be on that east wall, just a little more treatment, because that's going to be the key end wall that everyone's going to see driving down 3rd. And then there was a comment on activation of that kitchen or the eating area in the front there, that corner. It might be nice to have a whole garage door that opens up and animates that street corner, or possibly double doors. I only see single doors along there, that whole frontage. Maybe there's double doors or garage doors that open right up in the summer.
Right, like maybe out of the cafe to be able to open up and.
Yeah.
You're talking about the left side of the food bank where there's a cafe eating area?
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, it's funky.
Those are my 2 comments? Thanks.
He's writing down dollars on it.
Yeah, money guy.
Well, you got a window there, so it's a
Yeah.
door. but-
What's a garage
Yeah.
blitz?
I think where I would usually put my added commercial viability of a building, and you know exactly what you need to do in this space, and you're taking care of it exactly the way it needs to work. And I'm just, all I can say is how excited I am to see this come to the community, and what a great location for it too, and everything else about it looks pretty fantastic to me. So I'll just pass. There's been some great comments already, so I'll just pass.
I would agree totally with John. I hope to see this, it's nice to see that the district is helping to make this move forward quickly, as I know a lot of these space and services are very much needed here. Overall, the form, I think it's been executed very well with obviously the limited budget constraints that you're dealing with. If there is anything for me to suggest, I think the suggestion about the garage doors is a really good one for increasing that interaction between the street and making it visible for the people inside and vice versa too, to create that interaction. And if there's any chance of increasing the size of the glazing, even breaking it up somewhat, just because I think natural light is just so important for people's well-being, and the fact that for a long period of time in Squamish we have a lack of it happening. So if there was anything, if you had to go with keeping the cost down on the actual exterior finishing materials, but with the trade-off of being able to increase the glazing, then
Like glazing to suites, you mean?
Pardon?
Glazing to the suites?
Yeah, I think what you've done at the street level is great, but I feel like almost in contrast to that the complete uniformity and the horizontal orientation, it does, especially where in the I guess it would be the more northern end of the building too. There's a lot of wall space that's still going to be there inside. That could be utilized to give those suites a little bit more light if possible.
Because I mean, from a cost perspective, a vinyl window versus a fully rain-screened exterior insulation system right next to it is probably about the same cost. So we can make windows bigger, I think, within our cost. Because these are little studio units, we got to be cautious that you're not looking at the guy's feet sleeping in the bed there, sort of thing. So there's some limiting things like that. We've taken the window, we've made them quite large. I guess that guy's getting a view from his bed, but we could maximize the height of them, I guess, to get to get that aspect going. Yeah.
But overall, I think it's really well thought out.
Yeah, obviously a project that is in significant need, and I think, we see a lot of projects that come forward, and going to your point, this would be the type of project I would be willing to kind of relax on the submission needs to just get the project done. We see a lot of private development projects that don't provide material boards, so that we should be seeing. I wonder on this project, it's a great site, but I think we're putting riparian value ahead of the disadvantaged, and I think we need to be able to weigh these things and what's really important. We're talking about a slough that's really just an old ditch that's had a few alders come in. I work with Cascade a lot, and they can bend things and adjust things, and there's all these kind of shell game that goes on with the province. I think they could afford to get you some space off the dining hall, which would be west, and what we're missing here is a semi-private layer of outdoor space. So I would really encourage that dining hall to be able to open up, maybe get a longer eave, and have a public space or semi-private space out there for the occupants of this building. On the 3rd Street frontage, I think a huge commitment for having a continuous canopy is something that the panels push for on a lot of other projects, so I think that's really valuable here for people to congregate and place to park bikes. I wonder about the storefront quality of it. Having just worked on the Worcester Community Services building, there was a lot of talk about the humbleness of using a facility like this, and maybe you don't want to be entirely on display. So maybe there needs to be a layer, and I think Dwayne was talking about layers on that frontage, a little bit more discreet. I don't think it's the storefront window that you want to bank on. I think people should be aware of it, but there's some people who are not uncomfortable using this facility.
Can I respond
Yep.
to that? So the whole idea is to take stigma away and to invite other folks who wouldn't necessarily use the food bank because it's stigmatized and hidden away, and so there's a kind of a dilemma that we have, and we've also thought about sort of increasing its usability by creating a bit of a co-op in there, so it won't just be food bank. Hopefully, at some rendition along the way, we want everybody to be like proud to be there, and we want community to come in. So, but I hear your point, but and we're just trying to work on
I'm
those.
just wondering if there's a slight veil there, or some levels of privacy versus, looking like a commercial retail.
Okay.
Crossland, are you, like, when you're talking layers, and did you mean like a landscape?
Landscape layer. Yeah. Maybe it's just in those planters out there, and they're already there. So maybe it's just something to be mindful of, and
Thank
you
you.
obviously
Yeah, I
have
appreciate
gone through that exercise in your head.
Yeah.
The elevation on Main is unremarkable. So I would say do away with that piece of lawn, because somebody has to come and mow the bloody thing, and just plant it out, right? And something really simple. Don't spend a lot of money. It doesn't need to be garden-esque. It just needs to be something that'll put a veil in front of that building, because it's not a valuable elevation, so it might just be a valuable landscape. And maybe you can trade that off for some private space in the riparian. And the last comment is the discussion on windows. Perhaps the upper volume, as it gets greater, some of those window fenestrations could reflect the fact that those are quite voluminous rooms, right? So maybe that's a possibility. That's it for my comments. Good job.
Great, yeah, great project again, and I'd commend the district on kind of expediting this path and the barter of the land. It's great to see. I think you're obviously getting lots of community support for it. I think Crosland's comment about that east elevation is a great one, because I had a bit of a challenge with that. It is a prominent street corner, so any corner building I think needs a little extra attention. But just given your floor plan, how it works out, I understand that corner doesn't got like the garbage room there. So yeah, if that can be a little lush shade garden, whatever the good word is, of ferns and some trees, I think it would be less daunting.
I think the other thing we're trying to, and I think we're pushing as much as we can. There's refrigeration units behind this wall that we're working with our commercial kitchen guy, but we're trying to wrap as much glass around that corner as well to give that main corner impact, at least to here. After that, it's concrete, it's garbage.
Yeah.
We'll articulate the concrete a bit and whatnot and plant in front of it, as you said.
Yeah, but I think even in the 3D, like the lawn is just going to be dead zone. So that with nice tall trees of sorts would be nice. I'm going to poke the bear a bit and say it's a great roof plane for something like another partner to come on board and throw some PEs up there, or something to provide some energy to the building, and that's going to take another partnership, but it's the perfect roof line for it. So I'd encourage you ongoing, or at least plan for that, so you could wire for it with your electrical consultants, just make that make sense in the future. It's rare we get a clean roof line.
Even if there's I don't know what kind of grants or whatever's out there. We've done BC housing projects when they were full on LEED and domestic hot water solar on a roof like that.
What's big, you could probably do both super easily. And I really commend you. I mean, I think tight budgets breed good architecture sometimes. So, I think this is one of the cleaner, articulated buildings we've seen in the past 6 months, and I really like it. So, less is definitely sometimes more. I'd be curious with the windows. I kind of like the simplicity and the horizontality of it, given the views they're going to have. But I wonder if you could play with the color of them in the siding. Like right now, they're all black. Is there value in making some of the recessed ones match the siding color, so it's not so scattered, but maybe you can get a bit more depth? And being that they're outboard insulation, you've got a bit of a shadow on those windows, which is great. So just to play that up for not more cost, maybe there's a way you can just get a bit of variety. But otherwise, I think the organization's smart. I think the idea of the top floor getting some ceiling volume, I'm not sure what your roof system is, truss, or if it's parallel truss, but it'd be great if those had some volume in those higher rooms and then had a special window. You know, if that's the order of the living and you kind of have a different experience at that level, might be something.
The window
Emotionally.
heights can kind of step up as they move to the
Yeah.
left there.
And again, I know it's hard, but outside social space, you've got it on the 3rd and 4th floor. That balcony's pretty small. Not sure how many people you can fit around a table, but that is a pretty crucial thing, I think, in people going through this type of challenges in their life. So if there's any way to get a built-in seating area so you can fit 5 or 6 people, that's the only social space. Or Crosland's point is great about the ground level patio space. If there's any way on that, like the landscape site plan, to get some more space.
Problem is, whenever you get more space, Maureen's going to fill out with more building.
No.
Well, like
no, I agree with you.
covered outside space.
Certainly been pushing Cascade because I agree. Outdoor.
And it could be
semi-private
creative. Like I'm
space is
sure there's
tough
a
on the-
resilient buffer to.
But
rising sea
our
levels that
unspoken thing is probably they're going to be able to go and use it after everything's in place,
Yeah.
riparian or not, and that's why we're trying to get some garden boxes. Maybe we can, if we can't get the riparian back, maybe we try to expand that gardening program to push some more usable space into the riparian
Send the
area.
viewers in.
So that we have a huge food programming within this building, and so gardening is a big piece, and it's a very therapeutic piece when working with folks who will join us in gardening, but also working in the kitchen and also working in the laundry and the food bank. So we had to give up outdoor space. I think we've gone as far as we can as far as the building goes in terms of budget, I've been told.
And we used to have a much larger, this is an outdoor patio, it used to be much larger until we needed a transformer.
The transformer.
The transformer inside the
Does
building.
anybody have any ins there? We can get that put somewhere else.
Off grid.
Underground.
That's your trade-off. BC Hydro. Challenge.
Grid, yeah.
But that outside balcony space, if there's any way to increase one of those. Lighting's obviously crucial in our climate, like outside space and street frontage. Just make it bright enough, I think. I think that's it for me. I think the ground plane's great. I like the concrete kind of simplicity. It'd be great if it's board formed, like in the renderings, but it's probably not. Great project. Really, really happy to support it. And I think we've been restrained in the architecture, and it's a nice building. Good job. Thanks.
One more.
Final comment?
I wanted to say I like the changing the windows to vertical, and just that then you can make sure that they're lowered enough to be able to be viewable from a seating position.
Right.
So that they're not, the window's not going to start here, and you're like, great, I can see the sky, but.
Right.
It also has to be railing height kind of, so there's probably a tricky balance. Or you make
What we do, we are only, I think we're only 2 or 3 feet above to keep them nice and low like that, and then we usually get away with tempering them for railing height, so we don't have to do a guard.
Sorry, the only other comment I forget was the railing on the staff deck. It'd be nice if it's not what's shown in the elevation, but something either parapet or it's not just an aluminum picket. Yeah. I like that there's no balconies on the front 3rd Ave too. I think that's nice. Keeps it clean. Keeps it. You don't get stuff left out there getting wet all winter for 9 months.
Okay, Shan?
Just one more comment about the color, just to counter what some of the other panel members have said, is I think that there is something to be considered if you're leaning either way about the impression of quality that I think with these more understated tones that are on here, that is more of something that you would actually see in a larger commercial market project. I think there's a certain dignity that's brought to that, rather than, I've seen that in Vancouver, where there's social housing buildings or programs with these really bright poppy colors on them, and it's kind of stigmatizes the building as being that, rather than it being something that can actually integrate and just look like a nice building that doesn't scream that this is social housing. So just something to consider when you're finalizing your materials and colors.
I think it's pretty good for color right now. Like
Well, that's what I mean. I personally don't think that it needs to go more primary. I think that there's something.
No, there's a difference between like primary and being a brighter blue.
Right.
Yeah, but it's just with blue especially, it's a fine line between when you go to something that can go.
It was green last week.
I like that in the one right now.
Is there a leftover piece of green in there?
With the sun trellis.
It might go green.
That one was nice.
It's fine.
Either or, but yes, I like the zen of it, and I'm trying to create a more zen feeling and not a brashy or brash kind of.
Okay, all comments in, perfect. So let's vote. We have
No,
no,
we're
no,
not
no,
voting.
no, we're not.
No,
Okay.
just
But you can
just
vote.
make your
I want
comments.
to know.
Do we need to summarize our comments, or you kind of have it?
I've noted all of them, yeah. No, and great comments, and I absolutely love working in this community. Everyone's from city staff and this group, so friendly, and thanks a lot for having us here.
Okay.
Yeah, great comments, thanks everybody.
You'll see the minutes anyways.
Sorry?
You'll see the minutes anyways.
Okay, perfect.
Have our comments? and we can- Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation. Yeah, let's break for 5 minutes. Okay, let's start again. Next order on the menu is DP 473, the Northyards at 39666 Government Road. And to present is Aja from the district. Oh, sorry, Jonas.
Just before ADP moves on to the next one, I remember that Mr. Pryor is not able to be here, the council's liaison on the ADP, and he just asked me to extend a big thank you to all the members for the past year's work, and wish everybody a happy holiday.
Thanks, right.
Thanks. Thanks, Rich. Okay, so yeah, this is DP 473. We're in the right on the edge of the Northyards neighborhood, and it's very briefly, this whole block was zoned RS3 and RS2, and then the district itself did a mixed-use rezoning to create the MUD 1 zone. And that was this year. And so this is the first of several developments that we'll likely be seeing in the coming years for this block. And just very quickly, I just wanted to point out that there's 3 variances. They're all quite minor in the eyes of staff. The first one is to increase height, and that's to basically allow for this entry tower that kind of goes up the length of the building and the butterfly roof design, and staff are supportive of that variance. The second variance is a very small side setback, and that's due to a slight encroachment for the parkade. And then the third variance is to reduce the off-street loading from 3 spaces down to 1 space, and again, that's supported by staff. We feel that there'll be shared loading and that the office is likely to have a low demand on the loading space. So just to summarize, in the eyes of staff, they're meeting all of the DP guidelines. So DP Area 6 are industrial park guidelines, and so staff's conclusion is that these have been met, and we are looking for ADP's comments in relation to the site plan, accessibility, circulation and layout, and as well as the architectural design, form and massing and articulation, the materials, and the landscape plan. And so I'll pass it along to the architect to present in more detail.
It's Aja Tanis with Huja Architecture Studio. So as Aja mentioned, this project is in a new mud district in the Northyards. This is Government Road here. Our site is this green one right in the middle of this block, which is the new mud. Basically, it allows for 2 stories of commercial with 3 stories of residential above, so 5-story building. We are in the floodplain, so the building is going to be almost a story above Government Road. So the first level at Government Road will be an entry into the parkade. That's happening at this existing access here. And then up onto this, it's like 7.25 meters, will be the first level of commercial, and then up from there. So when we started with this site, fronting Government Road, there was an existing access point here, and then I'll just take you back to this one here. There's one property between us and the rail yards. So we wanted to address this corner. That's sort of what set out our site layout. We wanted to minimize vehicle use on site. We have one of the smallest sites in this block. We wanted to provide as much commercial space and residential units as we could. So instead of having parking on surface with building above, like at grade with building above, we wanted to enclose the parking, keep it underground, and allow for more space, which has led us to this design. So basically, the only vehicle access is happening here with the one loading zone up to the first floor level. We have, to get up to that height, we have quite a few stairs and accessibility ramp up, and that's actually what's pushed our building to the southwest corner of the property here, and then opened us up on the northeast. So this creates this open plaza here and then in between. And to note, the property line is right here for our property, but we also own this adjacent property, which we'll be doing a shared open space with. The main floor is recessed back about 5 feet for 2 stories to add more space for pedestrian circulation, as well as covered entries for each of the commercial tenant spaces, and those front, north, and east. So we wanted to, because it's the industrial business park and it's adjacent to the rail yards, we wanted to sort of stay within the theme of that area. It's kind of it's a working area, it's a bit gritty. We wanted to, we pulled up some precedents of what we feel the building could look like. Again, it's a changing neighborhood, but we wanted to keep it with that sort of industrial feel. So some precedents down here. These are the 2 levels of parkade. Again, this would be where you come in at the street, and the minor encroachment is about 6 inches. So first floor, this is at the top of the podium. You can see line above here of the upper stories. So this creates these covered entries for all of the CRU units. The entry into the residential portions is through a lobby here on the end. That's where that large tower is. And then a secondary entry down here. And all of these they have double doors and lots of glazing to open out into that common courtyard. We've provided a mix of studio to 2-bedroom units, each with private decks. The 5th floor the units are a little bit smaller. They pull it back to have the upper floor, the 5th level, step back, so it's not a heavy building. And that also allows for some potted landscape up on that top floor. Some bedroom layouts. The 1-bedrooms provide a flex space, and then some of them also have a den. The 2-bedrooms all have flex spaces as well, but only den space. And just a rudimentary section showing this sort of tells the story. So Government Road down here, and then we're up onto the floodplain before we can start with the building. So Parkade is underground. This is the north facing side. It has 22-foot ceilings with mezzanine above, and then the other commercial units below, office on the top, and then 3 residential. So for material, we wanted to use sort of a traditional material in speaking to the location with the adjacent rail yard. And we also wanted to do something a little bit different and be a bit playful with the building. So we've introduced some brick for the entry tower to define that for the people living there. And some signage will also be in the brick tone as well. We're using a weathering steel for the columns, some signage, just to, again, speak to the rail yards. Most of the building will be in a hardy panel, a darker gray at the bottom to ground it, with the lighter colors up in the residential sections, a darker gray where it will get a bit more weather, and then a light, almost whiter gray within the covered deck portions. All the soffits on the commercial and on the upper butterfly roof up here will be in a wood material, so a hardy wood or a longboard, and that will help to provide a bit of warmth against, the more traditional, not harsh, but heavier type of materials, brick and metal. So some images of the signage. So the south and west portions of the building are pushed right to the setbacks. And if you look at just scroll back to the main floor here. If you can envision how these would set up for tenants, they're exiting out the backs of these units. So this space it doesn't set up for heavy glazing. It's more of a utility type of space in the back of these units, and exiting along the back. We also have a separation with our lot line. We can only have a certain amount of glazing. So we're maximizing glazing in the office space, and then we don't see a need for heavy glazing along those 2 facades. Some renderings of the project. So we have the stairs coming up are quite a challenge, if you can imagine trying to stair and ramp up almost a full story in such a short width of land. So we were trying to push our stairs out towards Government Road and sort of grab pedestrians coming along. It's going to be, there'll be new sidewalks and things, so it's going to sort of change the look of that street. And we wanted it to be not just, a switchback of stairs up to this commercial area. We wanted it to be a place where people could hang out. There's going to be landscape planters and benches in amongst those stairs and the ramps, so people can sit there and have their coffee, what have you. And then the same happening in this common courtyard area. We have some, people can put their benches or their wares, tables out depending on the tenants that we're going to have. And then we have these built-in concrete benches in amongst planting areas, which Laura Lynn can speak to. We did a quick little shadow study, and really that's just pointing out, in high usage times of day, so lunchtime, and at the end of the workday, those 2 plazas are going to be, they're getting sunlight in the middle of the day, and then at the end of the day on those steps, they'll be an interesting place to hang out. So, and we've patched Laura Lynn through. She's our landscape architect. Are you there, Laura Lynn?
I am. Hi.
Hi.
I'm Laurelyn Swizzo. Some of you may me there. I worked out of.
Laura, we might just turn the volume up on you here. Just give us a moment. You keep speaking?
Hi.
Hi.
Good.
Is that
Yeah,
a
that's
little bit
better. Yeah, thanks.
Keep it that loud.
Yeah. Hi. So my name is Laurelyn Swizzo. I'm landscape architect for this project. Some of you might know me. I worked in Whistler for one of your local landscape architects, Tom Barrett, for 15 years or so, and have recently moved more north, so I wasn't able to be there, but thanks for letting me call in. I guess she sort of touched on some of the landscape already. I'm sure you guys will have a couple questions, but maybe I'll just do a quick summary. So we've got the front entry, where we've got quite a series of ramps and stairs, and where we could, I'm fitting in some kind of tiers of landscape areas. I tried to keep it, it's going to be quite shady over there, so lots of native ferns and shade-loving plants, as well as much evergreen material as I can to keep it green most of the year, all year if possible. Some smaller deciduous trees out front that and I think I'll add some nice flowers in the spring and summer. Did you have a plant photo board, picture board there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so you can kind of refer to some of those pictures to get an idea of the plant material. And then as we come up the ramp, which Kenneth has sort of gone over how she stepped it up with the parkade, I think it gives quite a nice access for mobility challenge, so that you're not sort of stuck over on the side with a little ramp. It kind of integrates it quite nicely. Once we're up to the building level, then everything is on top of the slab of underground parking, so we're all at one nice level up there. I've got a little courtyard in the east of the building. I think it'll capture quite a bit of sun throughout the day, and then I have some larger trees to give shade and help with the two buildings on either side, so it doesn't feel quite like a chasm in between. And got a bunch of bench type seats in there, and we've tried to add some creative lighting so that in the time of the year where you don't get as much sun, that's still an inviting place. And there's lots of opportunity for movable furniture, or if you don't have furniture, there's still lots of opportunities for seating. We've got quite a few bike racks because Squamish is bike central, so we've got some at the very back, but still quite visible to the whole plaza, so I don't think it's going to be a problem putting your bike there and worrying about somebody snatching it. And then we've got up front some more bike racks, a couple bike racks in the front sort of little plaza. But if you're just stopping quickly, then maybe you just want to keep your bike there, run into the shop. The back area, we've got quite a drop right now if we look from the level of the plaza down to the existing grade, but as I understand, this may be coming up with other developments that are possibly to the south, so that area might end up getting filled in, but in case that doesn't happen, we've got a nice buffer of native-like plants, some trees to help shade the building in the summer, and then they'll lose their leaves and help warm the building in the winter. And we kept a buffer on the west side as well. So that would be below the railing and walkway. And it's a evergreen shrub that gets up about 2-3 meters or so. And I think that'll be nice screening for that side of the building. Yeah, so I don't know if there's questions or if we're doing questions yet, but kind of
Thanks,
the presentation.
Thanks, Laura. We'll do questions in a bit here. Is there any other?
Yeah, if I may add to the presentation, because the zoning is something that the district drove earlier this year, and so I just want to give the ADP some context on the overall set of properties there. The Mud 1 zone is kind of 3-tier approach, where it goes to quite industrial with some residential at the very south at Pioneer Way, and then it goes more light industrial and then more neighborhood commercial at the north end. So this side is along Government Road, and that's why the focus in terms of usage is more commercial and office rather than light industrial.
Okay, thank you. We'll start with questions. I can start. Thanks for the presentation, Dennis. Do you have a traffic study on this area?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, it was required by the district.
Okay, I noticed all the photos are kind of old. There's been some recent road upgrades that the district did, active transportation in that area. That's considered in that traffic study? Yeah, okay. What considerations have been made for the neighboring property that's a dog kennel or dog training facility? It's noisy, the train is noisy as well. Is there any special ones?
I can speak to that. That site's been purchased by a developer and is in the process of coming forwards with a very similar development. So.
Okay, and what about the train? There's many properties around here that complain constantly about the train?
I can speak to that because I was involved in this rezoning process. So that property that is closest to the train tracks, the zoning requires certain design features to be included along that western property line, such as thicker windows and other considerations. But it doesn't extend past that first property.
Okay, unfortunate. Okay. And then just the parking count. It looks like you meet parking, but there's quite a consideration on motorcycle. There's 6 or 12. Can you explain the park? It looks like you meet it, but there's a lot of motorcycle parking that.
It's like half, so
Yeah.
maybe Asia can speak to that.
Yeah, our zoning bylaw does allow motorcycle parking spaces to count as car parking stalls, so 2 motorcycle spaces to an equivalent of I think up to 5%.
There is a limit, obviously.
Yes, so they're at that limit.
They're at.
Yeah.
Okay. The room dimensions. I don't see in some floor plans how big the bedrooms are, and I see the overall dimension of the unit A and B, but can you speak quickly on?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there they are.
dimensions
9.
inside,
Sorry, yeah,
yeah.
I see that. Okay, thank you. That's my questions. Thanks. John, do you wanna?
I have a question about the 3rd floor use. Jonas, sorry. I see purely residential here, but is it not a consideration to have live work on the 3rd floor in this mud zoning, or?
Yeah, so live work is permitted, or it could be either live work or residential. And live work, all it means is it can be residential, or you can live and work in it. So it's it's a pretty loose term in terms of, you know, requiring employment in those spaces.
Okay, so the design of the third floor layouts are purely residentially oriented. I don't see any usefulness for a live-work scenario if those designs are provided. Let's put it that way. I know I'm getting beyond question here now, so I'll wait with my comments, but that's kind of where I'm going with this. There's only one elevator provided in the building to be used for residents, commercial, and for loading. Okay. I'm going to leave it there, but I'll have a lot of comments.
I was asking about the elevator as well too, so I don't think I have any more questions at the moment.
Just excuse me. To staff, when you rezoned this to MUD 1, did you have a vision? Because the parcelization is odd and encumbering to anybody to develop any of these individually. But what vision or direction have you given to rezoning to MUD 1?
Maybe could you explain a bit better the question?
I guess, you know, was there comprehensive schematic on how this parcel would be developed? These parcels, all the ones in this quadrant. Because if each developer just comes in with their little piece, it's very piecemeal. So was there any vision from the municipality to guide or allow developers to be more creative than just individually parceling and individually having a parking garage ramp, internal connections, streets, anything like that?
Yeah, there's some features in the zoning that facilitate collaboration between developers with setbacks. At the same time, what we heard, we had the stakeholders were quite heavily engaged in the rezoning process, and so we try to strike a balance between not over-regulating and allowing some flexibility here, and then providing some incentives to collaborate. But this was a bit of an experiment in terms of the zoning approach. We wanted to make sure that some of these properties don't turn into a low-density residential form. So it was a rather quick process to rezone it, and an attempt to leave flexibility and see what happens.
I can just build on that, is that right now, between the two sites that are currently actively developing, we're trying to coordinate, and their architects are working together to put some pedestrian connectivity between the two properties, so they are talking to each other to try to design and facilitate that connection, and staff's trying to also facilitate that. So we are trying to work kind of with what we have in the current situation. And then the largest property, or the property that's to, I guess, the middle, the one in the middle, both of those properties are owned by the same owner, and they're trying to subdivide to actually create a larger parcel that's more in line. So
Good.
Hopefully if that has a positive outcome, that will add to it as well.
Good, okay, thanks. I guess again, maybe to staff, if second floor commercial doesn't survive, can they convert this to residential, that second floor?
That's
And
a good
designs-
theoretical question.
I think we'd have to revisit that if that's the case, but at this point, the zoning would require non-residential uses.
Okay. Has the applicant considered a shared ramp to the adjoining property down the parking garage ramp?
Yes, the developer also owns this property here,
Yeah.
and this will be a shared access
Good.
between these two properties.
Excellent, okay, thanks. The decks aren't shown in the building sections, correct?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. On the upper deck facing north, you show trees. What provisions will be in the building to have those trees there?
So maybe Laura Lynn can speak to that, or?
Laura Lynn, did you get my question?
Yep.
It's Crosland.
Sort of.
That upper floor terrace
Yep.
facing north, what provisions are there for the trees that are shown in the architectural, not shown on landscape?
Yeah, I think obviously structural will have to can take the load of soil up there, but I see it being raised planters, 1.2 meters, say, square raised planters, and then have sort of a smaller, probably maybe flowering crab apple or something, one of the varieties that doesn't have any fruit, it's going to just make a huge mess. Or possibly little small pine or something in those raised planters. That would probably be the solution if they want to have larger material up there.
Okay. The architectural shows large trees along the west, but your planting plan just shows shrubs.
Yeah, I don't think there's quite enough space there to show large trees. I have a couple at the front, and I think we could have some multi-stem birch at the back, but the evergreen shrubs that I'm proposing, they're quite a substantial, they get pretty good size, so I think it'll create a pretty good green buffer in there.
Okay. And is there a street tree, or is there intention maybe at the municipal level of, is there a street tree for that road?
I'm not showing any street trees down at the street level, but I do have these, a dogwood tree, so I think the way that they're in the, because there's actually sort of two tiers, if you refer to my plan, I think that will give a nice treat effect because the sidewalk is so close to the ramp. I think it'll give a nice effect anyway along that part of the street. I can look at putting another tree on the, I guess you can see the east side. I've got space for another small tree.
Yep.
But they would have to be smaller scale trees along there.
I like the beginning of the ramp and the stair system, but that kind of falls apart at the top. Did you ever explore continuing the ramp to the east on the top leg so that those using the ramp don't get dumped out in the corner there, but maybe you're closer to the entry and the larger space in the front plaza?
Kenneth, do you want to speak to that about how you're stepping up or stepping down, I guess, the parkade to accommodate the ramp?
We're trying to work with, the parkade goes to property line there, so it's under that upper plaza.
Okay, yeah.
And then with the district, we have to work with anything over 4 feet has to be behind that setback line. So as the stairs and the ramp up, our parkade is ramping down, so there's, a height restriction in the parkade. We could totally change the ramp and do a straight, like a dog leg back and forth, but we wanted to create something that was more of a like a usable space instead of just a boring ramp.
Yeah,
beside the building.
no, I agree. And Laura Lynn, there's one plant on your plant list, TM, on the plan that's not on the plant list. Is that Mertensiana?
Yeah, the mountain hemlock?
Yeah. Okay.
It's not
Glad to see somebody else does that too. Okay, that's the end of my question.
In the shadow study, 2 buildings. What's the second building?
Okay, so the second building is owned by, this developer will be developing the adjacent property as well. So we've just flipped a similar building to look at adjacency and how that courtyard will receive sunlight. So it was just to give a comparable.
Not the intent to do a duplicate building, design-wise, size-wise?
I don't know if that's really good right now.
And this is probably for both of you, the trees on the 5th level, is that accurate that that's the intent, to have large trees on the 5th story balconies? Laura?
I would say that maybe it's rendered a little incorrectly. If they are going to have trees up there, they would be smaller trees. They'll be stunted regardless because they're confined to a planter. So it'd be more of a small ornamental tree, something that can handle being confined. Like I was saying, maybe a small pine, maybe another pine of Cincinnati, like I've already got on the plant list, or a couple of flowering crabapple would be possibly a good solution. There are varieties with no fruit, so we won't have a mess. If the spring snow has white flowers, and it's a nice variety, and something like that. If they are going to go with larger trees up there, or what if they wouldn't be large, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay. Is it a wood frame building on top of?
There's definitely going to be some steel on the main floor, but wood ups.
And are those weathering steel columns, are those structural, are you thinking? Or are those, they are?
Well, we hope to, but we can span that before that span, so they don't need to be structural.
And then can you just clarify, I'm a little familiar with the zoning, but maybe for everyone else, the height increase of that over height shed roof and how that relates to the bylaws?
Yep, I can definitely speak to that. So the allowable height is actually 16 meters, and then if they're able to do a higher energy efficiency construction, they actually get a height density bonus of 1.5 meters for anything that's within the floodplain. And so that 16 meters becomes 17.5 meters. There is a different height bonus that the developer did aim for in this development that's tied to the provision of overheight industrial bays, and that was not obtained, but that is part of the MUD 1 zoning, and that's not what's being put into place in this development. So they weren't able to qualify for that additional height bonus.
So from 17.5 to the
19.
23, am I reading that kind of wrong? To the 23.7 meter?
Oh,
that's on overall. I see.
it's
Sorry.
geodetic, sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I just missed the dimension. So then the overheight, is there a variance for that overheight shed roof?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
1.69.
Okay. And what's the energy? What's their climate?
Yeah.
And we will be updating that when the step code comes in, so because that's all going to change.
And was there any exploration to have mixed use on the second floor, i.e. residential?
Yes.
Percent, there was?
Yeah. It's tricky.
Yeah. Okay, that's
balancing those percentages.
Thanks.
Okay, I've got some questions. Can you tell me what the edge protection is for the ramp that's going down straight towards Government Road? To the plaza, this edge here?
The loading ramp?
Yeah.
So that's on the adjacent property, so we'll be building, it'll be a handrail or a planter or something, it just hasn't been designed.
Okay. And so this is for vehicles to load, unload? Gotcha. Okay. And in the parkade, is that, some of that going to be commercial parking?
It is. So it's noted on parkade level 2. It says what's commercial, visitor, and office.
Oh, there we go. Gotcha.
Anything that's not labeled is for residential, and then all the other stuff is labeled.
Okay. And can you tell me what the width is of parking space 47?
47.
It runs adjacent to the
Oh,
stairs and elevator.
that would be, it's over 3 meters actually, it's larger than required.
Okay. Okay, that's all my questions. Thanks.
Okay, so a couple of questions. I think mine are maybe more directed at staff or maybe the owner. And it has to do more with kind of something related to what Crossland was saying and just, in evaluating context and character of the building. It's just kind of it seems like it's a new kind of island that's transitioning from an industrial to a residential use. It was rezoned, but the DPA guidelines are really related more to industrial, and so there isn't a lot of, there really aren't any requirements for this kind of new mix of uses. And because it's kind of in this area parcel that's just an island, I feel like this design is either going to kind of set the standard for everything else that's going to happen around it, or it'll just be piecemeal and kind of go back to this thing where everybody's kind of doing their own thing and it's not really a cohesive design. So I'm trying to understand a little bit more about how the kind of district is going to maybe ensure that there's a little bit of continuity between the design of the various parcels, and if the owner of this parcel owns adjacent parcels, if there's maybe a vision that they have for how this is going to come together, just so that we have some comfort that the long-term in looking at the long-term use, we can view the form and character of the building within that context. And so maybe a little bit of explanation. I get that it's experimental, but at the same time, I think if it is experimental, maybe a little more justification is needed why some of these design decisions are being made.
Yeah, so it is experimental, and like I said, the idea was to be flexible. I don't think we were aiming for consistency in design. I think our council and the staff level were quite interested in seeing diversity even in this one block of properties. So again, like we drew the line at, we're gonna regulate the zone, and we're gonna make sure that we're getting, rather than getting low density residential, we're gonna get light industrial and neighborhood commercial uses and then office space. And the other component to this was a density bonus for market rental. So all of these properties have an option of going into higher density, and this is what's happening here, if they are providing 30% of market rental housing. And that's where we drew the line on consistency in design. We have some provisions for the property that's closest to the rail yard. And we've got incentives for activating the open space that will be there. And we've got incentives for collaboration if you're building closer to property line between property owners. And the idea was that on some of these properties you could get shared accesses, so we don't have every single property have its own access, or two in some cases.
And is it intended to be kind of more of a pedestrian-oriented community and get folks from the Northlands residential neighborhoods over there, walking there to utilize some of the retail space? I mean, I don't know whether the retail space is kind of, it says it's supposed to be like a public hub for the Northlands yard, but I don't know whether that means kind of stores or, whether it's like the retail along Tamples Road. Just if there is residential there, I'm just trying to get a better sense of how that retail is going to relate to the residential to make it more livable.
Yeah, and it is, so on the north end, it is very neighborhood commercial type of residential services, whereas on the south side, it's more light industrial, and there's no neighborhood commercial in it. So it is the purpose was to service that growing population in the Northyards. We know that across the road from government, that's a high potential for densification, and that's in fact in our new OCP shown up as a growth area. And we lack significantly in neighborhood commercial services in Northyards. So that's the reason why it went neighborhood commercial at the top. And it's a pretty wide allowance for commercial uses.
And one last question, just on the parking, is it intended that residential visitor parking, for instance, will be shared with the commercial users?
Exactly, yeah. It's built into the zone that they can be shared.
I can
can speak to the DP guideline comment too, is with the updated DP guidelines that are coming in as part of the new OCP, I believe that we have applied like a higher standard and more detailed guidelines to this area. I'd have to double check, but I think that this was a bit of a miss because it's fallen back into the old DP Area 6 guidelines, which were like totally focused on the industrial park, and you're right, it's a bit of a miss for what we're seeing. Yeah, so.
Well, so I guess one other question, just in terms of processing, if this goes through a few rounds of review, is there going to be a timing issue where it's like we're looking at it under existing DPA industrial guidelines right now?
It's subject to when they submit their application, so it is these DPA 6 guidelines currently.
That's all I have. Thanks.
Yeah, just 3 questions. Is there a minimum size with units in Squamish?
No. We used to have minimum sizes for certain units, but a year and a half ago, we took that out of any minimum standards out of the zoning bylaw.
Just a question to ask on that. For the efficiency of the building, what was the decision for the central, the larger corridors? And it's like for efficiency, is it just strictly storage that was the driving force? Or?
No, we'll likely be running mechanical services through that core for the building. And we also, when we had our pre-app meeting, we talked about it's kind of a bonus for people living in this neighborhood to have, bike storage or that sort of thing. Because I guess the district envisions that as being a more bicycle user type of neighborhood. So we have a surplus of bike parking with those interior areas being, that they could be bike storage. They just haven't been designed right.
It just creates a fatter building for you by
yeah.
doing that, and your efficiency drops because of the corridor there. So it only leads to the question, and if you were to solve this, and I don't want you, it's a bit of a takeaway, but the limiting distance, it forces you onto that west property line considerably with and you have an exit coming out the back side there, so it sort of creates some code issues for you there, and just because of to go to the wider building. And wondering if you could solve it, that back exit stairwell will give you some, it's a question, it will give you some code issues there. I'm wondering maybe you could achieve that through some water curtains or something. I'm only asking the question is because the exit is coming out the back, and it's coming all the way along the west property line there. I'm wondering, maybe the question and the answer could be maybe you chose the exit. What's the reason for the exit in the back?
It's to get out of the parkade.
Oh, it's down there. Okay. And then maybe the question might be too is just the amount of windows on that west side may be impacted by the property line, but I'll just make that as a question comment, I guess. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Is there a materials board on this one? Materials color on this one?
There is not a materials board.
Cheryl?
What is anticipated construction type for this one?
So, like the materials, like wood frame?
No, like concrete, steel, wood frame, like what's the?
Yeah, so the parkade will be all concrete.
Yeah.
And then we'll likely be doing steel on the lower 2 floors to meet the spans, and then wood frame above.
Okay, so I guess to staff, is the expectation that all applications in this area would be elevated above the floodplain?
Yeah, any habitable space will have to meet the flood construction level.
Just a quick question again here. The garbage and recycle, how do you envision that working? Do you roll out a big bin out there for carnies to pick up, or are they coming into your parkade?
So how I've seen it work in downtown here is that they actually roll bins out to the trucks.
It's quite a ways.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, and you're having one of those larger bin, or what are you doing?
It'll probably be the smaller bins that they can maneuver. Yeah, we didn't want to vary our parking, so that's why it's in that location.
And you've planned it out that you have enough space for those bins?
Yeah, so the district's in the process of bringing in new size requirements. And so we are kind of beta testing that right now. And so this has been sized to meet that requirement.
Okay. All right, and the commercial parking on level 2, it looks narrower than the other parking stalls, but there's no dimension. Is it the same 2.75 or are they narrow?
No,
Sorry?
it's the same.
It's the same, okay. Good, thanks. Any other questions we missed? Okay. Comments? I can start. I like the treatment of the west side where you've got some brick. Where is it? Yeah, sorry, the northwest elevation, which is the west. The east elevation, sorry, there. You've got brick and it speaks to the sign that you got in the front on the north, but then there is no, most people would be seeing that road frontage along with Government. So a way to pick up some brick on your sign that you've obviously got on the east elevation, on the north elevation.
So you add more brick onto this elevation?
Yeah.
We
It looks
could.
like you've added brick to bring in the sign on that east elevation, to ability to bring it on the north elevation as well, that everyone is going to see.
So we have the sign at road here,
Yeah.
which is brick, but we wanted to define the residential entry
Okay.
in a different material. And street frontage hasn't been sorted out with the district, like the bike lane, 3-meter bike lane, or I know like
There'll be a separated bike lane along there. I'm not 100% sure of the frontage, but our engineers have communicated with with the applicant's engineer too. So.
all my comments. John?
Where do I start? I'm going to make a comment, but I'm hoping that my colleagues here will take it to a next level, but just the street front, to me, the massing over the street in consideration with the neighborhood nearby, I just find it really heavy and just not, I would prefer to see some setback and articulation there so that more light can come through and so that it's not so looming over the street.
The north elevation?
Yeah.
It is set back quite a ways.
Yeah, floor to floor as you go up the building.
If I may clarify something, because this is something that came up when we were going through the rezoning process, and we did look at bringing the buildings closer to the street, but then stepping it back. In the end, we made a decision that for efficiency purposes, we just had a greater setback and a uniform setback from the street. And there is an expectation that as the Northyards evolve, that there will be higher density buildings also on the other side of the street. So that's the kind of rationale why we left the setback as one setback rather than like a stepping back effect.
I still feel it's a little bit of an abrupt change from the residential side into the commercial aspect, and I think that what we've always talked about for this particular property and getting into the industrial or business park, if you want to call it that now, is to have something a little more of a softer segue into that side rather than a large abrupt structures all the way along that side of government. But that's just my thought about that. I do have concern. I can tell you one elevator like that is not going to work. It needs to be oriented better for loading. It should probably be bigger. I'm betting that 2 elevators is really what's going to be required here. You've also got security implications to consider. where you've got a building that's open all day long. So I'm sure as you go up into the residential above, perhaps it's a key card or buzz up or something electronic that will differentiate the types of people accessing the residential levels above. But 2 elevators would be much better, 2 entrances, perhaps some separation between purely residential and purely commercial, and then that leads into my question about the 3rd floor, which is live work. How do we solve that dilemma? So it's, you know, if you live on a live work floor, you're going to realize you've got commercial neighbors next to you, and that has security implications, but maybe that's something else to be considered. But then the design of the site, the unit layouts, doesn't lend itself at all to live work, and I don't know how we address that. But it's just a comment that the way it stands right now, it's not live work, it's just residential that is being sold there. And then I'll get into the stuff that I'm closest to and in my field, and that's the commercial. I don't think that as it's laid out right now, it's not functional. It's not functional by any means. You have commercial units with no service corridors behind. You can't load in and out a big commercial space through the storefront. It just doesn't work with customers. And so what we have here is these little tiny doors going onto a walkway at the back, where you probably should have loading type entrances and a driveway perhaps on that side of the building for functionality. So that's my main comment there. There really needs to be a lot of work around the functionality of the main floor commercial space for it to actually be useful. And then how that main floor commercial space ties into the neighboring community of the mud zone that we had hoped would be a little village of functional operating businesses. This seems very standalone just with the site circulation the way it is right now, and that's probably more of a landscaping issue, but I don't see it tying in very well. Those comments have already been made, but I don't know where the solution lies. I feel like there's too much site coverage on this lot. It's just all building without any respect to the fact that commercial tenants need to be able to get in and out of the property on all sides for the businesses to work. So anyway, that's it. I'm going to stop now.
Overall, I think this is really interesting, intriguing, and it fits into the place, like the forming character. I think the idea of bringing in all the corten steel and the brick and those materials are very suited to this area, and it's exciting to see this area being developed too, to see what's going to happen. The one thing about just to add to what John was just saying, was about it's hard to read this building completely standalone, knowing that it really how it functions and doesn't function is going to have so much bearing on what happens next to it. So I hope that staff very much have, as well as if you're doing the design for the additional property next door, that even though I know you can't present it to us like that, but that it is very much being considered holistically, like given that shared entrance, the courtyard, that is really being designed and considered to take into account what's going to be there, because that 5 stories, that is going to create a chasm between if it's another building of the same size, same height in that area. The butterfly roof and the wood tone soffit, that kind of thing, I think very much warms it up. It softens this industrial look. And I actually, with the massing, I think that there is something to be said for the 3rd and the 4th floors coming forward, and the actual the commercial spaces being recessed back. I think that actually will have a lightening effect on the building, and the off-kilter Core 10 support columns are a feature that to me actually makes this. To me, it makes this building so much more architecturally interesting, and I think that in and of itself actually lightens the building very successfully. The use of the lighter, hardy exterior panels in the recessed areas is something I'm very happy to see, that it's being utilized for increasing the light in those outdoor zones, but also just from a maintenance perspective. The sort of like randomness and wide opening, welcoming entrance stairs from Government Road are a nice feature that I think will help to really integrate it into the street front. This is obviously going to be a very different view from what residents in the neighborhood have been seeing thus far, but I think it sets a really good precedent for drawing people in from the street. I'm also have the same concern about there only being one elevator in a building of this size, because realistically 5 stories is not going to be considered a walk-up for a number of people, especially if people have bikes. That's another thing to consider, is if this is going to very much be a bike-friendly building, then accommodating with, at the very least, an oversized elevator to accommodate 2 or 3 people being in there with bicycles at the same time, or considering having a second elevator.
Yeah, I think that's totally doable, and I definitely agree with you.
The integration of maybe reconsidering the interior layouts of the 3rd floor to accommodate, like realistically accommodate live work that means more than somebody who's sitting at a desk on their computer, I think would make this very interesting too, and unique, that there would be.
We weren't required to do live work units.
Oh, you weren't trying to address that? Oh, okay, okay. I think that would be good. Just to have a bit of a variation in the units that are available, and just having something that's very unique that allows people to have maker space, or however that would work in that environment. But overall, I think it's great. Positive.
Okay. Well, I think it's really interesting to see some mixed-use projects coming along, and I know the intent that staff is kind of shooting for when rezoning this area. But I think mixed-use, I think should be more mixed and more flexible. Right now, we've got the layered cake going on, and I think in developing the building, it would be useful if those floors could be converted from one way or the other, depending on market. If the office space in this part of town, which is a bit of a stretch in my mind anyways, tanks, that isn't just an empty floor, that it could be somehow repurposed. I appreciate the shared parking entrance. I hate seeing every project have its own parking entrance, so congratulations to the applicant for working with the property next door. Assuming they own or developing the property next door together, I would like to see maybe more collaboration and really see, at least at a conceptual level, how that next property plays out and how these could find some efficiencies in that. And that would help the applicant too. The parking ramp, just a small detail coming down, looks like it kind of overlaps the handicap or the barrier-free parking space. There's down in the parking garage, there seems to be a lack of vestibule or safe places for people to enter the vestibule of the elevator. If you're in a chair or something and you have to get that door open, you're in a parking community driving on. So just think about the protection of the pedestrians as they enter or egress from that vestibule. the grades around the property, I think I'd like to see those in a reality. Right now, they're conceptual in the sections. What is the current condition, what is the future condition? Because it's going to be a whole story difference. So I'd just like to see that addressed if you return the panel. The mass, for me, the building has some really interesting things going on, but the mass is maximized, and it feels a bit too aggressive on certainly the south and the west side. I see some really interesting architectural things that others have mentioned happening on the north and the east, so I'd encourage maybe more of that to move around the building and into the landscape too. I think I'd like to see a little more use of those materials coming off the building and into the landscape, especially the steel element. The balconies aren't shown in sections, so I don't know, are they projecting a projection in the side yard setback, or are they all within the building? Okay. But I think in general, it's a very aggressive program for this site, and as somebody else said, it's all building, and I'd like to see the edges being a little richer. I'm very concerned about the lack of landscape along the west side. It's just shrubs, and we're talking a 5-story building. And then if this returns to panel, I'd like to see green building initiatives addressed more.
Yeah, I recognize the challenges being the first project in a higher density around you, so I think with that's going to come some design challenges that are really impossible to overcome. We see that in the business park a bit, especially with grade height and FCLs, like on the south side of this. I think the comment about the garbage room just being too impractical, too far away from the ramp. I wonder, even for people from their units going down, I think that could probably be positioned on the commercial ground level, would just make it easier for tenants and everyone, and then close to the loading bay, and the garbage truck could possibly go there. And then to John's point, I mean, the people who consulted on this zone, I think, come from they were like realtors and people with more financial understanding of how commercial space leases, and I think that reality of needing delivery to those larger, quite large commercial bays is crucial. So maybe on the east side of the building where the loading ramp goes up, that could be a hardscape plaza that could double as a loading and allow you to load large doors into the east side, and because you have control of the building beside you, then you can play off the...
Sorry, that is the intent there.
Oh yeah?
Yeah.
Through those double doors. So then again, maybe to John's, those need to be larger doors, and then you have the ability to set the next project back to give you a little more glazing separation. Yeah, I don't mind the ramp and stair solution at the front. I know that's really hard, and I thought it would look worse than it does. So I think the efforts, like that height is really high, but I think you've done some nice gestures to really make it probably like a sitting space, gathering space to get people up there. So I think the proportions are what I'm really challenging with. The kind of really high lower story that's recessed, and then not enough of an overhang on the second, and then another move on the top. So to me, it just feels like there's just an awkward proportion to the building, and I think part of that comes from what John reiterated is really maxed out. I know we can do that in the zone, but I think there could be some technique to introduce some elegance or a corner condition, because I think you've done that on the sidewalk entrance, but in the building I feel like it's kind of lost. I don't love that we have a variance for height when we're going so dense compared to what's there, and you have lots of opportunity. I think you could find a solution in the section to not have that. I'm not sure where that's, and then it feels marginalized because it's not quite, an amazing shed roof or an amazing rooftop access that can go over height and is allowed. So I think you either need to make it do something for the building, like roof access, and then you're allowed to go over height, or emphasize the corner substantially enough. I think the core 10, the brick is great in kind of, you know, historically referenced rail yard idea for materials. Unfortunately, I think then the rest, you know, 90% of the building is hardy panel, and on that scale of building, to do hardy panel well would be, you know, I've yet to see it. So I'd really encourage you to try to either carry more of that quality of material around the base at least, so where people are, we have brick and glazing, and up top you go to a higher quality panel, or you know, your precedents are great, I think. So I think you're, you know, I'm sure you are capable of that, and I know budget's a concern, but
Yeah, it's definitely a budget was the driver on that. We had
Yeah.
a lot more brick, but.
yeah. So, and it almost feels like that, right? So maybe there's a way to reproportion the building and put that money where you're going to see it the most, i.e. with those core 10 columns and around the ground plane, and then up top, yeah, hopefully there's another solution. I think it's a little misleading with the trees on the 5th floor. You know, it feels like we're kind of in design development and not quite at a DP stage. There's a lot of things that haven't been figured out. I'd love to see planters at that level, but in wood frame it's not really plausible. So, you know, if you are going to do that and it's going to help views all around, then you know, embrace it and do it. I think that's it for me. Sure.
Okay. So, I like what you're trying to do at the front with the stairs and the ramp, but a 1:10 ratio is way too steep. 1:12 is too steep. We really should be trying to go for 1:20 almost. So, you know, it's going up the ramp and coming down when it's raining is difficult. So, yeah, 1:10 is just impossible. And in fact, I'm using code 1:12.
Yeah, it actually, I think there's a discrepancy between mine and the landscape plans.
At any rate, it's very steep.
Well, it definitely needs code, that's for certain, so let me just check here.
Well, on page 2, it says ramps to be 1:10 max slope. PR2. So that's just not coded and not usable.
That's definitely an error, sorry.
So if you can extend that in some way.
Yeah, there's room for sure.
How, but yeah, that needs to be addressed. The parking is in a really bad place, accessible parking, because it's right when you're coming off of the ramp of the interparkade. So you should flip. You've got them as, I think, the electric plug-in for one of the cars at parking 41, parkade level 1. That could be an accessible parking spot, as could 48 on level 2. And then the second parking spaces for either of those, I'm not really sure where you put it. 47 could be wide enough, but then you're transferring into the aisle. So that really needs some way more consideration. I don't know whether or not your motorcycle parking could move to level 2 into the corner beneath the ramp, and then that would give you a little bit of space to play with there. Also, so these units could be visitable. It would be great to have pocket doors into the bathrooms. I think that works for all of the units except for 1 bedroom A. It might not work in that wall from the closet, really, but yeah, and then again, what Crossan said of just getting into the vestibule, that, you know, maybe if there's isn't room to sort of move that shaft, is to you know, even having line painting maybe on the ground so that it's highly visible. Watch out, people are going to be here. Okay, that's my comments.
Okay. So I guess my biggest concern is the interaction of the residential and the commercial with respect to loading and the lobby entry. And just the conflict that could occur there, having your lobby right where your loading needs to occur for the commercial. And there's not a huge amount of space along that side there. I mean, I'd rather see the lobby on Government Road. I feel like over on the side it's kind of relegated, you know, to the back. I think it makes loading and unloading just for residential or drop off a little bit more difficult. And you know, I feel like the residential is an important component of the development and should, you know, have a presence along the street front. I think overall the building, it's a nice looking building. I think the material selection looks nice. I actually like the butterfly roof. I agree with John's comment just about the imposing nature of the elevation along Government Road, and that it's a lot of building right there, and maybe that can be dealt with just a little bit with some more articulation. You know, I'm kind of torn between whether the residential should recess back or whether it's, you know, better to kind of overhang the commercial. But in any event, to me it seems it has an imposing feel. And maybe as the rest of the community develops, it'll fit in, because that's kind of what it sounds like the district wants to see over there, is a little bit more high density with bigger buildings and get the community and neighborhood used to that. But it would be nice to see a little bit more of a transition from the very first building to kind of what develops in the future. And the only other comment is I like the materials and I like the corten columns. I find them a little distracting to the commercial, just to kind of go in front of the storefronts. It'd be nice to see them maybe in a more, you know, arranged in a more columnar or linear way, so that they aren't in front of the windows. But if, you know, if the retail and commercial tenants don't have an issue with it, then I guess it's fine. I think they can look nice. And I think that's it for my comments.
Overall, I like the playfulness of the project. I like how it's being integrated into the site. I know the challenges of the height. I think, and I like the form actually. So the approach I think is really good. One of the things I think that gets hurt on this project, and I think it is resolvable, is really just the fatness of the building, and through resolution of maybe thinking about maybe just narrowing the building. And I know there was a part of the design is to make a larger central core, but it would sort of speak to it. I think Cosmo was saying is that it's just a little bit bigger on the site. And if you could narrow it, you could take all that center stuff out, and if it were bikes and stuff, just make the most secure bike route in the back of the building, in the sort of back area, which is in the further south portion, and that would solve your limiting distance problem on that west side. So if the building is narrower, you could actually have all the glazing you show. I think there's going to be a bit of a difficulty with all that glazing on that west side. So again, I think it'd be a win-win-win if you can just get this building narrower, take out the central core, get all your storage and all your bike stuff in the back corner, and then I think that really will be the right proportion for the project. I like your unit layouts a lot. I think your design of the units is great, with the exception of your 2-bedroom on PR6 there. It's almost like you want to flip the living room and the kitchen, to could look at perhaps that and then take a look at your window proportions and maybe just take a design study on how big your windows are to the space, and I'm only highlighting that, and maybe just a graphical thing is that you've got really small windows on your elevation there, and on your 4th floor you'll notice that they're just incredibly tiny, and yet they're living rooms. So I think probably just do a design study on your window proportion, and much like the last applicant that was in, I think this project would benefit instead of these smaller window proportions to a larger window proportion, and that may work tall and thin, or just larger windows. Again, I think once you narrow this building, it'll be the right proportion, and it'll allow you to have maybe larger balconies, and these are family type units, and some balconies are really big and yet some are really small, so I'm wondering if there's a better balance on balcony size. The devil's in the details a little bit on this. I do agree with the panel's comments about the use of materiality. I think it's very successful. The devil in the details is how, well, I guess you're forced into a steel roof, and that's okay. So I wouldn't want to see a whole bunch of beams get integrated into this. It's going to muddle your architectures. It's very clean in your approach. So I think you're just forced into a steel roof structure. I think the last bit is around materiality. I guess I'm just be a little bit bold on the panel. I think we're a panel again, and we're missing things like context diagrams. I know this is a new area, but it's so easy for planning to require the applicant to show what the adjacent context might be under the zoning, because right now you're a standalone project and you're the first one out of the gate, and we're giving you comments on a project that we can't relate to. So I think context diagrams are going to be useful. I also think a color board and all that stuff as a panel. I mean, we're all here today just to talk about color materials and form, character, and massing. And it's really, in my opinion, incomplete. And I'm not criticizing the applicant at all. I do think we need a checklist from Squamish that allows us as a panel to review projects in thoroughness. Otherwise, I think keep going with this. I think there's something here. I think there's a bit of a hybrid style that you're flirting with. I like the landscape consultant's approach to this inner courtyard and what that can be. I think it just needs another layer of design, a little more design time. Thank you.
Thanks. Joe?
So, just 2 comments. The first one being building height. I'm wondering, given what you described about the construction methodology, especially that office level 2, with ceiling height, and just to ensure that it's actually usable, because I see that you've labeled the desired floor-to-floor heights, but by the time you drop in the structure and everything, since you just want to make sure that's usable, and I mean, you're applying for a building height variance anyway, so maybe you need more, right? So, and the other thing here is to staff. I think, elevating the, basically what's the street level to the podium level, I think it's a nice idea where you actually separate the pedestrian and the cars. So perhaps you can make it a requirement, or make it like encourage all the applications in this area to actually have the podium levels be linked together, right? Because I think, by the time so extensively, you bring your street furniture up, right? So it's safer space, bigger space, and I mean, you can begin to really landscape these areas, either built in or street furnishings, more trees and such. Because right now it's kind of strange to disconnect the street and the building, but it's the floodplain is the bylaw is a bylaw, right? And I think the ramping and stuff, I think it's fine, right? Just maybe really make that a pedestrian way.
Okay. Thank you. Any last comments, sir?
Sorry. Go ahead. What I missed, the front door, the lobby seems to be too east facing, and I think there's the opportunity maybe to wrap that a little bit. I see there's just a little water closet in the CRU that prevents that lobby from having a bit of a turn to the north to the entry side too. So I think that would be worth exploring and getting a water closet out of a really prime spot there. And then lastly, I wondered why the parking seems to be flipped for me, that you would put the commercial on P1 and the residential behind a secure gate at P2. That's it.
I mean, that's, we can flip it around, that's not a problem.
Okay.
This is kind of general, probably for Asia a bit too, but I'd almost contradict the last comment about the podium in that we have to be, one, I think there's an opportunity to tell a story if you want to do the landscape kind of idea of the floodplain level. Like nowhere do we experience it, we're just filling with dirt and then a building on top. And as we see in the business park, you get these awkward property line scenarios like on the west, right? Where you have a lock block wall and then nothing. So I wonder if there's a chance there for either daylight into the parkade or accessibility to an elevator rather than having to go up the ramp to get to an elevator if you're not coming by car. I just think there's probably a way that you could just finesse the existing ground plane relative to the podium to make it, you know, not just a bury it and forget, but maybe a good opportunity to deal with your side yards, which are pretty narrow, deal with some practical things and get some daylight or exhausting out of the arcade.
I just can't comment on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're planting up something like in the back two elevations, something that's ultimately gonna change in this zone.
Yeah.
And then the east and north elevations are the fixed knowns for us. So
Because you can control them kind of.
exactly.
Yeah.
So we're working with the the architect, we're talking with the architect to the west and trying to figure out how we can connect all of those properties. And the planting on those two edges are, you know, it's pretty minimal. It's not a very defined space because of those unknowns on those properties. So it's kind of, you know, we're chasing our tail, but we're all trying to get it to work so that it all becomes, you know, there's access to our common plaza in the middle from all of those properties.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I don't think it's on you. I think it's more just, you know, keep that opportunity to not just divorce that floodplain. Below the floodplain, we can still do lots of things below the floodplain, entrances and storage and landscape. So let's not just make a big dirt pile. I'm sure you can do it once the other projects kind of give you some input. Sorry, that's it.
Okay, yeah, we're way over time here, so let's do a vote. There's four votes that come. ADP A, ADP supports the project and overall land use as presented, or overall project as presented. ADP B, ADP supports the project in general and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve our following recommendations, and we can outline those. C, ADP supports the project in general and would like the applicant to resolve the following recommendations and return to present the revised project to ADP. And D, ADP does not support the project for the following reasons. So we need a motion for
Motion C.
Motion C, John. ADP, okay. Seconded by Crossland. All in favor of C. ADP supports the project in general, would like the applicant to resolve following recommendations and present. So should we summarize? I got 42 comments here. Should we discuss those and how did you do there?
Maybe we can narrow them down, or
I think from a staff perspective, we'd appreciate that if you could pull out the ones that are.
Probably
pertinent to
categorize
the
them.
Categorize,
Like
yeah.
massing, materials, landscape.
Yeah, I want to speak to that too because I feel like a lot of the comments that you guys had are relating to zoning, which is, you know, that's more something that needs to be addressed with the district and not with this applicant. So I think if we focus on what the panel is, you know, here to do.
For sure. Okay. So let's summarize here. We didn't have a material palette. That was a couple times. It's coming. Let's see. One elevator, not acceptable. Look for two. Orientation, layout for the loading. What other things? Garbage, relocation of that. Possibly on a commercial level, make it easier for everyone. Too much site coverage, so possibly narrow the building, bring the bike storage to the back. Materials were good, I think was the overall feel here. Possibly some more, Chris, you had comment maybe higher quality materials on that ground level.
I just thought proportion of the building, the massing in general.
Right.
Some clarity in the landscape, I think. Or something showing that.
Yeah. Some context on how it functions with the other or the neighboring properties that are developing soon. What else we got here? Articulation of the government street side.
Accessibility.
Accessibility, the ramp needs to be at least 112 to code, but 120 preferred.
The accessible parking.
Accessible parking to possibly relocate, swap with the EV stalls. What else we got?
I'd say look at the height variance again. Does
Height
does it have
variance.
to be in there?
Does it have to be in there, or if you're asking for it, Cheryl's comment, can you ask more if you need more?
Or earn it, make that usable space.
Yeah, earn it.
Environmental incentives a little more clear. If you're getting a density bonus from Whistler's climate zone, what does that mean?
Right. What other things we got here? Pocket doors in the bathroom. Larger windows. That's kind of the grouping there.
I mean, there were a lot of good comments, so I'd hate to see some of those fall off the table, so.
Well,
I
they're
mean,
still in there.
You guys can work with them, you've heard a lot of comments. Yeah.
Oh, I miss. Okay. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you again. So we are way over time. Do we need a break, or can we just keep rolling?
I have to leave just after 5 o'clock.
Likewise,
Okay.
Go at 5.
but I got to do a quick car shuffle.
Okay, we need a car shuttle, so we got to stop for
You didn't ride your bike?
4 minutes. Okay, we're back, ADP. We're looking at the next applicant, which is the Garibaldi Springs. Susan, I'll let you take it over.
Thank you. My name is Susan Stratis. I'm filling in for the planning department. I'm a planning consultant. I've been working with the district to process this application. The application is a rezoning and OCP amendment. It's not a DP application, but it's being brought to the design panel for early feedback. This application was before you in October, and we're bringing back a number of changes and a bit of new information since the October meeting. So it's a 48-hectare previous golf course site on Tantalus Road. The current OCP designates this site as Greenway Corridors and Recreation, and the proposed OCP amendment is for the residential parcels within the golf course site to be redesignated as residential. The current zoning is CD12, and the proposed zoning is a mix of ecological reserve for the open space areas and a new RM4 zone, which would be created for the housing parcels. So the October 19th meeting, the ADP made a number of recommendations, including more mixed housing forms, including some single-level adaptable suites, which have been brought forward. The applicants will bring you some plans in a couple of minutes to show what these look like. There were recommendations regarding the road system, and the applicants have responded by establishing a hierarchy with internal collector roads, eliminating the north-south collector road, providing a new access off Tantalus for improved east-west access, and additional pull-off parking on the collector roads. The other ADP comment was the need for local commercial. There is possible opportunity for expansion of commercial use at the clubhouse building, and there is also opportunity on land that is to be dedicated to the district, just under an acre on Newport Ridge Drive. And another suggestion from the ADP was that the pedestrian routes be more clearly identified on the collector roads, hard surfaced and lit, and this has now been provided, and that paths through the neighborhoods themselves be more clearly distinguished, which will be brought forward at the development permit stage for each phase. So I don't have the plans in my presentation. I'll turn this over to the developers in a second on Polygon. But I just wanted to point out a couple of things, the internal discussion that's taking place mainly related to transportation. So the decision has been made in conjunction with the district engineering department and the active transportation people that getting rid of the north-south collector road that used to run down through here is acceptable, and that having the Dowwood entrance here serve parcels A and B is acceptable from a transportation planning point of view. There will still be an emergency access road, and if I could just get this working. There will still be an emergency access out to Dowwood through this narrow strip by the riparian area of this pond. So the basic breakdown will be 160 units, more or less, accessing, or that would be the maximum accessing via Dowwood. A new access route will come in south of the hotel, and that will serve parcel C primarily, and there will be a third point of access from Newport Ridge Drive. So those are all access points off arterial roads that will serve the development. Sorry, I just lost my space here. My arrows. Here we are. The other thing we have been doing since the previous meeting is looking at the overall traffic impacts, and there is a traffic impact assessment being done that looks at the peak future periods, 2022 being the build-out year, 2032 being 10 years beyond that horizon year. And the traffic impact assessment is looking at a number of short-term traffic strategies that are focused on Highway 99 improvements that can be done in the short term, one of which is a right-in, right-out at Newport Ridge Drive. And the second one is possible traffic laning, signaling, control modifications at Garibaldi Way. And I guess, as everyone knows, that's a terrible place to turn left. The main traffic movement issues are how to get people southbound. And the framework we're working within is that the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, the province basically, really wants to limit any future points of access to the highway, any future signalization. So the things we've been wrestling with this project is what is their contribution to the traffic that is going to be generated, and what will their contribution to the solutions be. And the Garibaldi Springs development is one of a number of developments planned on the east side of the highway running here. And I think as part of this traffic study, we've advised their traffic consultants that we need them to identify the threshold when these possible short-term measures are no longer sufficient, and what the longer-term options might be, and what the Garibaldi Springs development contribution should be, so that even though Garibaldi Springs may not be making the actual longer-term improvements, by the time the zoning process is through, we'll have something in place that they'll be making a financial or other form of contribution to those bigger traffic issues that are in this area in general. So that's the end of my presentation, and I will just turn it over to Polygon. Kevin Shoemaker is here, who will show you a bit more closely what improvements they have proposed.
Could I have one quick question
Yes.
regarding the access onto 99? Are there ever any discussion or consideration from, say, around on like Dowwood Road about in the future having like an on-ramp overpass going southbound?
That is one of the longer-term solutions that's being looked at. I'll just pull up this drawing if I can get back to it.
Especially considering the long-term connectivity to the highlands from
The
there.
traffic consultants are certainly aware of that. Just get a map back in front of us here. There are a number of challenges in doing a flyover here, one of which is the spacing to the rail tracks. So that is one of the longer-term solutions they're looking at. I haven't identified, there's 5 or 6 longer-term solutions, that being one of them. Doing one of those oddball lanes on the highway where you parachute out and go into a storage lane. There's a technical term for those.
Protected left?
Yes. Thank you. And so that is also being considered. Obviously, the flyover here to go south and get onto Government is a preferred solution, but there are really real technical challenges in doing that. Also doing left turns from Newport Ridge Drive is another one, but unfortunately you're really compromised by the existing development that is there. But that flyover is definitely one of the longer term considerations that the traffic consultants are looking at.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll just turn it over to Polygon here. I'll put their presentation up, which I think is this one? Nope. I'm going to just turn it over to Emma Hodgson, who is an expert at this.
Actually, I'll start while Emma's doing that to save time. So, first of all, thank you everyone for staying.
Step towards the table because otherwise
Oh,
our
sorry.
sound guy will get.
I know. My name's Kevin Shoemaker. I'm with Polygon, and Bruce Hemstock is our landscape architect with TWL. Again, thank you for sticking around. I will follow Susan's report in order of the items that she's addressed. So the first one is with respect to housing. So I'm just going to remind everyone that the district has directed on this site that there's no apartments and no single families. So we are restricted to the townhome form. But the direction from ADP was to dive deeper on what we had proposed, and we've done that. So we've done a few things. It's kind of hard to see. Is that showing up? No. How do I get the arrow? So on the most northerly, it's showing up here but not up there. Oh, that's frustrating. On the most northern portion of the site, next to Sky Ridge, we're proposing a pocket neighborhood, which, if anyone's familiar with those, they're quite popular in Seattle. Small cottages, some of them have parking within the suite. Okay, now how do I go back? Okay. No, so I don't know how this is. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so we've proposed 2 pocket neighborhoods within the townhome communities. They're separate cottages. Thank you. Crosland to the right here at the very top, adjacent to the new single family. These are 1-level cottages. Half of them have.
That doesn't look, you see, because it doesn't show up on the screen. It doesn't show up on the screen.
Okay, then just pretend it's not happening. I'll just, because I need to point to things on the screen.
Yes, can you do it with the computer?
I can't. I don't know how to do that. All right. Sorry, everyone. So the pocket neighborhoods, single-family cottages. How'd you do that?
So pretend that there's a screen there.
Okay.
So your cursor's over there.
Oh, I see, okay. So here and down in this location, we have these standalone one-level cottages, which offer living on one level and grade level access, and they would be adaptable. So in other words, any of the homes that we have that are grade level and one level living, we're going to do them to an adaptable standard where the hallways are the correct width, one washroom can be accessed, and if someone wanted to make it fully accessible, they could adjust the millwork. In total, we have 53 homes that are of that nature, where they're grade level, one level living, the bedrooms are on the same level, and you come in at grade. In this location, there's steeply sloping grade, and if you can imagine, there's a lane at the top and a lane at the bottom. The lane at the top, you come into the home. From the bottom side, you come into a suite that someone can build within their townhome. We're going to rough it in. It's going to be pre-approved by the district, but it's another 17 homes that are suitable, that are also grade level access, one-bedroom units. In general, where we're able to do that is where we're out of floodplain, so that happens in this location, up here, and a few spots down there. So there's the one-level cottages, there's the suites, there's master on the main duplexes, there's two-level duplexes, there's three-level townhomes. So if we go to the next couple of slides, we've also introduced stacked units, which are effectively an apartment one over the other. At the ground floor, it's a one-bedroom with a car in. The upper floor is a two-bedroom with surface parking. This is an affordable three-level townhome. So I'll just quickly walk through the types. This is the cottage that I was describing. Half of them have a garage in and half of them are just parking on surface. And you walk to your parking space, which is a little bit remote, and it's circling, they're around a central green. These are three-level townhomes, duplexes. So I don't want to go through every type, but I guess I can tell you that we've got a very wide range of housing to address that question now. As to the local commercial, we've done a couple things in that regard, three things actually. The suggestion was to push this road back out to Tantalus to connect into the communities. We've done that. Right now, there's an existing clubhouse building here that was going to be part of the larger lot. And what we've done is kept that as a separate legal parcel with its own zoning. It will be used by the hotel and the restaurant in the short term, but in the long term, it's a commercial building on its own lot. So you could foresee that being anything over the long term. And we've added a separate parcel down here where the parking lot is, which is 0.8 acres, which I guess it was good that I was sitting here the whole time. The very first proposal under one roof, that was a 0.5 acre site, if you can get a sense of what you could do on this site. But for our proposal, it's parking, but it's a separate legal parcel that would go into the district inventory, and they would have that for future use. And then the road gives direct access to the commercial that's along Tantalus already. So those are the three ways that we've addressed that. Okay, with respect to the road hierarchy, we've done a few things. So we reorganized the units within all of the communities to allow for what we call a collector road. So those roads, there's one here, and then there's this one that goes right through the community that connects down to Newport and back up to Tantalus, are always with a adjacent walkway, overhead street lighting, and only ever have townhomes on one side. So they will feel more like a city street. And then there's also lay-by parking in key locations on those roads that would be in excess of visitor parking, and they would be publicly accessible. So for all intents and purposes, if someone was riding or getting to the trails up here, there would be some lay-by parking in that location. And then the internal lanes are typical with townhomes on either side. And then there's the, there's the Newport dedication, but that's in the future. So those are the two main ordering principles. I should point out this north-south road, that's a decision by staff. We were indifferent as to whether or not that was in or not. So the decision's been given to us, and that's what we're going with. It wasn't our proposal. We designed it both ways. So this, after many meetings since the last ADP, this decision has been made.
If I could just point out, it's still a trail connection. The decision was made that we didn't need vehicle access through there, but it is still a major trail.
What's that? The trail? Yeah. So just to expand on what I was talking about with the cross sections, this is the collector road here. There's a path, overhead, street lighting, two-way traffic, and a townhome on one side. And in some cases where that same road goes through, near the hotel where it goes through the ecological area over here, and in one area down here, it narrows up to just be the two-lane, to as narrow as possible. But where we can, it has lay-by parking and the adjacent path. The trail network. So the hierarchy we have here is there's a main north-south path that is paved. This was adjacent to the road that went all the way up, but with the road being gone, it's still a connecting path, paved, lit, and 3 meters, 4 meters wide, 3.5, I apologize. There's the accessible loop, which is fully accessible at grade and all the necessary features, so it is fully accessible. And then within, there's what we call multi-use, it's not quite the right term, but it's 3 meter paved, lit, secondary path network that connects the townhome communities to these other paths and to the roads. And within the townhome communities, there's 1.5 meter paths that would connect to the lanes, so you can go from your townhome to an internal path, to a multi-use path, to a main path. So we're continuing to work on this hierarchy and where they connect, but we believe we've got quite a few layers here that are working quite well. So just on parking, I'm going to use this drawing to talk about that. So we've added 188 parking spaces to this area around the site in a few different locations. We're redoing the cross section of Tantalus to separate the corridor path off into this green space, and that will allow for parallel parking along Tantalus. In key locations on the internal collector roads, there's lay-by parking. We've created this parking lot off of Newport to the south. And those are the main additions. We lost a few spaces by creating this separate parcel for the clubhouse, but the net gain is 168 new units, new parking spaces, I should say. And I think those are the main points, just in the interest of time.
Great, thank you. So, I guess round of questions. It's 5 o'clock. Sarah, do you want to start?
No questions.
No questions, perfect.
In terms of long-term maintenance, is this all going to be under one strata?
The proposal is that there's 4 stratas. The 4 stratas have what they call super strata. So that super strata has representatives from each. They take care of the overall maintenance, so they meet monthly and talk about the monuments, storm scepters, any equipment that's on strata land. We have proposed to the district that there would be a separate tax roll that works out to about $40 a month per home that will fund the maintenance of the public land. And that will be done by the district, but it's funded by the homeowners that front it. So to the district, there's no cost.
Yeah, and then the district maintains all of the roads within there, or are there any public roads? that
They
are Stratis
maintain all the
owned?
public roads, and there's, well, actually, they maintain, the only public road actually will be a section at the top here off Dowett, and this piece of Newport are the two public roads, the rest are strata roads. But there's covenants and there's standards that they have to be maintained to.
Great, thanks. Wade?
Yeah, just quickly, how does parking work again per unit? Is it
So we per unit, we
Yeah.
meet the bylaw standard.
okay,
We've committed to exceeding the bylaw standard for visitor, and then in excess of that, we have these spaces that are on the collector roads that are in excess of that. So the exact numbers are to be determined at DP, as are the final unit counts.
But we're looking for 2 per unit
Yeah.
and 1 for any suite. That would be the standard.
okay. So then just a question, so I understand your unit plan, is it on the A unit then, would that be a tandem parking? 'Cause you've got a unit over a unit?
No, the way the A unit would work is that the one, obviously the one car in is for the lower floor.
Yeah.
And it's a duplex. I don't want to fiddle with this and try and zoom in, but if you can imagine, there's 2 duplexes beside one another.
Okay.
In the space in between, there's 2 tandem spaces that are exterior.
Okay, tandem.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But they're not in the garage, they're on surface.
Okay.
And those details will be coming back to you through a DP. You know, again, we're only making decisions on land use and zoning. All of those design details that are important will come back to you at the DP
Oh, so
stage.
this is one road.
Yeah, we're really at the conceptual land use stage,
It's
just
just
a
a
kind of
demonstrating
reminder,
mix.
yeah. Good question still.
Okay. No, it's good changes, no questions. Sean?
Is there any parking areas considered for visitors to the park space?
Yeah, so this large lot down here is exactly for that. And then adjacent to the clubhouse, there's parking that exists that would be retained. And then along the road, there's parallel parking, and there's a small lot here. Those are all adjacent to the community park, like the more active area. And then if there was a big event, like a bike race or whatnot, that's what this extra capacity along Tantalus is anticipated for. But for daily users, it's right around there.
How about up in the bottom of the Dowd side there? So
Down
down
here?
near where that little lake, and there's a little playground in there, I believe, as well, like right around there. Is
Yeah.
that a consideration?
We just got that comment back from staff, so we're gonna have to provide a turnaround down at the bottom here. So with that, we will have some lay-by parking.
But there's parallel parking at that spot anyway at this point.
That's right, there's a little,
At the end of the purple. there's
yeah, if you
parallel
look at
parking.
your package, you're down.
If I could add to that, actually, one of the things that will be done as this goes through approvals is the district will get a right-of-way over all the strata roads. They're strata maintained, you know, back to your question, but the district will have a right-of-way agreement that the public can use those roads. So all of that lay-by parking at the north end will be publicly usable also. It's not going to be strata only, the public can go in there. So we'll have an agreement on that.
It seems that almost every park space that we have at some point has a little parking area that's
Not enough.
becomes overloaded. Even fishermen's can be overloaded at times.
Well, the
so
fact that that road is no longer going to creates an opportunity for
Mhm.
parking because there's room for a turnaround now.
Absolutely. Thank you.
My question's already been answered.
The little parcel that's the parking lot down at the south that'll be District of Squamish, does it have full frontage across the front, or is that just a drafting, like,
Yeah, it's
the road
fully
right
front.
away? So it doesn't have that funny little sliver in the front of it?
No, it's fully
Okay.
fronting on
Okay,
Newport,
good.
yeah.
Excellent. That's it.
No questions?
Okay. Comments?
It looks
Okay,
good.
John.
I'm really pleased that we have some
John's got
adaptable
his,
units. The colleges are awesome. And, yeah, I'll wait till it gets to the DP stage to make comments on it. No, but good work.
Nicely done, really, no comments other than the work.
Dwayne.
I have no comments. My other personality that left me some notes. Just ensure affordable housing is sprinkled throughout the site. Makes sense. And then she made a note about local commercial. I think when I'm just paraphrasing what she's saying, small neighborhood type community in corners. So they're thinking about, I think she's talking about nodes or commercial nodes throughout the neighborhood.
Okay. No comments. There was really good changes from what we tried to ask last time. So excellent job.
I'd say the same thing. It was nice that it was very laid out and clearly addressed, each thing as best it could be at the time. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing the next phase.
Yeah, at the risk of repeating, just addressing panel's comments and making it very clear how you've done that, really commendable. The access, the increased access, allowing the green space to run east-west and not having the circulation interrupt that, I think that's bang on. So look forward to seeing it in DP.
Yeah, likewise comments. For me, I appreciate the unit types. That's hard to get creative and crank those out in a clear enough manner. I think those are really probably the most creative mix we've seen in Squamish, and that's really ambitious. Yeah, I'm sure you'll address some of the parking, but maybe if there's ways you can do softscape parking or green paver or gravel parking that's not so obtrusive like a parking lot. I think this will be used as a real community asset for events and people spending the day there. So yeah, maybe some just planning for expansion in the future somehow would be great. But otherwise, really looking forward to seeing it come forward.
Okay.
Christmas.
Let's vote. Your quorum. Motion.
Good choice.
All in favor? We're at A. Okay. That was great.
Can I say something? No, I have some business on the table before everybody goes. Can we ask staff that it's a requirement that we have material boards come?
We have.
Yeah, because
We did last year.
she seems to think that Candace seemed to think that we didn't, so.
Yeah, that should be staff
That
to
should-
uphold that, I think, too, because we have made that a point. You're right.
Yeah, absolutely, so,
And all consultants, that are required to be present.
yeah, I think it's better for here.
It's a simple request, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Lip balm.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Seconded, Dwayne?
Yeah, Dwayne, well done.
Oh, mover is Sarah. Seconder is...
Yeah, it is. I was